All right, so I want to make this video about what is a draggy or a pulling arm action and how do we kind of go about correcting that in the session. So what are some things that we can try to do to kind of remedy this pulling or pushing strategy and get into a strategy that works more holistically with our whole body. So let's get into it. The biggest thing to understand from the jump is that I just think to understand a pulling and a dragging arm action, you're just trying to make sense of like, it feels like the tissue on my arm is getting pulled as my arm is accelerated. So it's like the sensation of these tissues being pulled leads me to believe that my trunk is pulling off to rip my arm through. And then we pair that sensation with that movement and we're like, oh, that's the action of pulling off. So to understand, like, just in its most simplest form, it's like if this is the implement I'm trying to throw and I want to pull it, like a pull would be like a row, right? So I'm pulling it to me, I'm pulling it from in front of it. So the weight or the implement is behind me and I'm pulling it forward. So I'm saying, get up here with me, get up on up here, and I'm gonna throw it. Versus, so that would be, leading the throw from in front, pulling from in front and reaching behind to come back. However, we want the throw, we talk about, like ground reaction force from the ground up, let the kinetic chain, let the energy sequence through your spine, through the kinetic chain, all of that verbiage. It's about learning how to just use the energy you have and get it up the body, to the arm, to the hand, to the ball. And when we pull, that's just an inefficient strategy because we're using the top half to pull the bottom half and say, come on, get up here. When in reality, we know the most efficient way to develop force sequentially. So that means like each portion of the body has its own moment to shine, that they're sequencing so that the whole can be better. So we want the energy to flow from the bottom up to the top. So if you notice the chin is going forward and the arm's still back here, that tells us that the upper half isn't waiting for the energy to come up, but the upper half is pulling away from it. So then the energy, like the spine isn't as mobile whenever you're out here, but when you're back here, now the spine can get involved. So we want the energy to be from the ground up, not from the top down. And whenever we're dragging or pulling and the head pulls off, that means we're pulling with the top down, and that's the wrong order. We want it to be driven from the bottom up, more or less. So the next thing that I like to do to treat a pulley or a dragging or an arm that's pulling from behind, that's just kind of like torso's over rotating first, I want to get you in a seated position. So if we can get you in a seated position, now in order to get this throw off, the only things that are working are how my torso rotates and extends and how my arm works. The stride isn't as involved, so it's really easy to learn to maximize because if you're right here and you pull off, now the only thing I have to do is my arm. But I can learn to get my torso involved into the throw, and you can see easy 1 to 3 mile an hour gains, and then you just take that internal sensation, copy and paste it onto a long toss throw, and see if the gains translate. That's what I did for me, and I was able to identify acceleration strategies that weren't dragging, that weren't pushing or pulling, and I was actually one that allowed me to throw at a higher velo. So I was able to learn directly from the seated throws, take that into long toss, take that into the mound, and keep my velo right there. The second immediate tip that you can try is what I call is throwing the hand and not pulling the arm. So a lot of times we think of like my slot is on the wall, is this 3/4 angle. So then I'm gonna get into this counter rotated position and I'm gonna accelerate on that plane of motion. When? And so I end up thinking about my arm coming through on that plane, this line. However, that leads you to think of this long lever, and that's not the goal. I want you to now only think about, this is all I'm gonna do as hard as I can. So the throw is gonna be unconscious until the ball gets to our fingertips. So all we're trying to do is say, when's the best time to take my forearm from this position and do this? So then I get to the position to throw. The throw is going to be unconscious. Whatever throwing pattern you have, that's the one we're going to go. The only thing we're doing is, when do I accelerate my forearm this way? And I backspin the ball up my fingers. It's the only thing I'm thinking. So throw the hand, this would be throw the hand. Wait, and then throw. There you go. Just throw the hand. Versus it's easy to think about, oh, on that slot, oh, my whole arm action, like, oh, pull the arm through. Versus when you think throw the hand, what that ends up doing is the emphasis is further away from the arm, right? So my emphasis is on the hand. Everything else below that, I want to be subconscious. I just want to get the throw off the best way that I know how. If the whole arm is conscious and I'm pulling with the whole arm, it's like where our consciousness is, our subconscious can't go in and the throw can't just naturally get off. So it's like we go in and by us placing our focus on the whole arm, it ends up locking it down because our conscious brain, it can't keep up with how dynamic and how complex the throw is. So it's a little too much for me to get in on this video right here, but if you want to know more about that, shoot me a message and we can get into it. The key is, what I want you to know is that if you keep the focus on your hand, it allows your body to be much more athletic and get a better throw off. So if you keep the focus on the whole arm, it's going to narrow down the movement options your arm and your body has to get the throw off, and it's going to look choppy, it's going to be slow, and it might end up being more pulling and dragging. So then the emphasis, if we're not putting the focus on the entire arm, is just on the hand, and the hand really doesn't come in play until the acceleration phase of the throw. So the arm is floating into ER, it's floating into ER, and then now, once we bounce out of ER into IR, that's the acceleration phase. That's the only time I want to focus on moving my hand fast. So I'm not trying to move fast back here, I'm still floating, and now, right here, I'm trying to move fast. So just hand, throw the hands. The third piece is, are you pulling not because of the way you're cueing the arm, but because the torso is just timed up too early. So as I'm going to throw, instead of the torso being right here, the torso is right here. So now my arm's way back here because my torso started rotating early. So things you can do in session to play around with that are, dude, just take the timing of your torso. So if you start right here and you go up and you go here, and when your foot hits, you're too early. So now let's say, like, what happens if I start back here and I have a longer distance to travel until I get to that position? Maybe that works. Maybe you start open rotated, and the goal is, okay, once I start to throw, I have to get back to neutral and then get to my position. That makes it challenging. So maybe that ends up getting you so that you're not rotating too early. But the mechanism of why rotating too early pulls your arm off is, notice what your chin is doing. If your chin is pulled off like this, then that's gonna tip the energy. It's like if I keep my chin right here and my eyes level, that allows me to not pull off. But in the moment the top of my head does this and I go into extension, that just lowers the cost of you to go to the strategy. But if you stay tall and you're able to, like we spoke about recently, throw over the shoulder like this, then that keeps everything going in the direction of the target. So the final piece of over-rotating, or ultimately pulling the arm right, is over-rotating the torso could be. What we're gonna do to counteract that is, I want you to think about getting in like this position. So we're gonna walk it out. And now from this position, I want to counter-rotate so that we're coiling around that glute. So if I get into this glute and I hold no tension, I can rotate and there's no tension, right? But if I put some tension in that glute and then I rotate into it, now I can feel that bad boy loading up so that it can unload me. So we're gonna walk into that position, coil around that hip. Now I want you to get in this position dynamically. So instead of coming through like this, so I'll do it to the camera, like this, to where we're already turning left here. Now I want you to hit this point with we're coiled around that back hip. So instead of going like this, it's like we're catching later in the delivery. So like a time. We're on that third click, that's where we want to be hitting this. So we want to be able to be counter-rotated, not neutral when not open, counter-rotated in that third click. Versus like that. So when we're in the middle phases of throw, so we have like over the rubber, stride, and then everything that happens after foot plant, right? So in the middle phase of the rubber, we don't want to have lost our leverage. So what I mean by that is, like, if I'm too far forward, right, and I get to the middle phase of my throw before my foot plant, so I'm gonna go into foot plant and see what I have left to throw. dude, I don't have much, right? Because I'm already gone. So it's like, as soon as we tip to the left, it's like we're a cup and all of our water pours out. It's like, dude, we have to keep all the water in our cup and through the middle portion of our delivery so that when we go into foot plant, we have water to throw into it. But if we're already rotated and dumped, we have no water, so that when we go into foot plant, there's nothing to put behind it. So in the middle portion of the throw, it's like, dude, I want to feel like I have energy to still put in. Versus when I'm in this point in my throw, I don't want to feel like all my energy is already running its course and there's nothing I can do to control it. So what that looks like is I'm going to do a couple of reps full speed so you can see.